Welcome to Inner Alchemy with me, George Stubbe, trauma, music, and plant medicine. This is the podcast for people who achieved a lot and still feel that something is missing. If you are caught between anxiety, perfectionism, emotional shutdown, and if you are ready to find a quiet mind, flow, and a sense of who you are is truly enough, then those conversations are for you. Through honest conversations with people who have done the deep inner work, we explore what it truly takes to move from superficial success to deep meaning. I'm George Stubbe, a psychologist and certified music therapist specializing in nervous system regulation. I love to utilize music, breathwork, plant medicine, and approaches that work through the body to create experiences that really shift the nervous system and not just the mind, because the true change is happening in the body. Let's dive in. Yeah, welcome to today's episode of Inner Alchemy, and I'm super happy to be here today with Ignacio Diaz Jr. And Ignacio is a classically trained pianist who has taught music for over 4 decades while pursuing an equally long path of consciousness exploration. Breathwork led him to Bob Monroe and the Monroe Institute, where he now serves as a director of music strategy and development, as an audio engineer and as a trainer. And his own program, Creation Station, uses Monroe sound science to help people reach expanded states and access their creativity. And his life's work being, in his words, to bridge music, creativity, and consciousness. Welcome, Ignacio.
Thank you,
I'm
George.
super happy
Thank you.
we're here together
Glad
today.
to be here.
We have so many directions we can go in this podcast.
We've had so many conversations and really great ones, and so illuminating and thought-provoking, and so we have lots to explore.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's maybe nice to mention that background, that I know you through getting in touch or getting introduced through the Monroe Institute, and then collaborating with you on music for the Monroe Institute.
Conscious
Something,
Connections.
Yes.
The album Conscious Connections.
That was the first album we did together, and now we have a few new projects that are coming soon. And in your bio, your extended bio, I read that you had your first experience with meditation, with altered states, like very, very early on in your life. And I would be really curious to hear from you a bit more about this journey from back then to where you are now.
It's a very curious story. So it happened around age 11, and my parents had decided to go. They were going to a meeting that evening, and I was at home by myself and, practicing music, and I decided the house was quiet, so I was going to try this thing, meditation, that I'd heard about and seen, and so I turned off all the lights, and I took a cassette tape that we had and put it in the cassette player. I lit some incense, because that's what you're supposed to do, I guess. I didn't know. I was 11. I had no idea, but I did that. It was nice atmosphere. And I just sat down and I listened to the music, this very beautiful, serene sound, and got quiet relatively quickly. And before I knew it, I heard the tape player click off. At the time, it was 30 minutes per side on the cassette tape, not extended play. And came to and just thought that I felt unusually peaceful and fine, and got up and went and played more music. And so I would do that every now and then. I didn't establish a regular practice at that age. I was, doing other things. I had school, family, my own music practice. But But whenever I had a chance and it was quiet, I would do that because I was sort of captivated by the experience and having no language around it. I didn't understand what was happening. All I knew is that I felt very peaceful. And we can fast forward a little bit to
Hmm.
today, recently, and going over the catalog of music that we have at the Institute, I was listening, and oddly enough, I recognized some music that I was listening to. And it was the very music that was on the cassette that I played when I was 11.
No way.
So it was an exercise of Bob Monroe's. So
Wow. So your parents somehow had that in the house.
we got that tape because we would go to a chiropractor who was a friend of ours, and when we were in his office, in all of his rooms, he had cassettes that he would play. And one day, my mom said, "Well, that's a really beautiful, sound. We really like that music." And he just opened up the cassette player. He said, "Here, you can have it. I have hundreds of these for all the rooms." And so I took it home, and we would listen to it every now and then. And then, it's just put away. But I thought, well, that music's relaxing. It's meant to be relaxing when you're getting your chiropractic treatments, your adjustments, and so on. So I thought, I'll just use that. I didn't know what it was. I just put it in. It was relaxing music. And there we have it. So it's a curious story because
Very amazing how the connection through space and time and that.
Exactly.
Wow. And you already mentioned the Institute here and there now. And I think it would be great to talk a little bit more about Bob Monroe and the Monroe Institute, because I can imagine that some listeners are not familiar with it yet.
Bob Monroe was, by nature, a very, very curious man. Quite a character. Humble beginnings, and ultimately ended up an executive in New York, in television, in radio. He was a producer. He was an audio engineer. And he, in the 1950s, in the late 1950s, he started to have these experiences. His first experience was a spontaneous out-of-body experience in 1958. And when that happened, he became very, very fixed on figuring out what that was and what was happening. He thought that he was maybe unhealthy or he was dying. So he saw doctors, psychologists, and they said, "You're healthy, maybe smoke a little less." But, Bob never drank alcohol, didn't take drugs of any kind. And they said, "You're fine, you're healthy. Maybe go to India for 6 months and meditate." People report these kinds of experiences all the time. And, being a businessman, he had things to take care of. He wasn't going to take 6 months out of his life to go and, meditate or go visit a guru. So he began searching for answers. And that was the inquisitive nature of Bob Monroe. He was very almost scientific about it, to try to determine what was happening. And in some of his work and experiments, he actually was trying to devise a way for people to learn efficiently while they sleep. And so he would experiment with sounds, and someone brought to his attention, binaural beats. And so he was working with that, and he realized that using this audio technology led him to have inner experiences that made him, it really propelled him on this quest of research and discovery, and ultimately leading to the establishment of the Monroe Institute, which is for research, development, and also a place for people to go and explore on their own expanded states of consciousness or awareness, so that they themselves can have a direct experience and gain understanding from their own perspective and how that impacts their own life subjectively.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for telling that story and like describing what the institute is. And what I just heard in your story once again is that like one of the USPs, so to speak, of the Monroe Institute is that you use music, audio to maybe facilitate altered states or to make it a bit easier for people to find their way into them. And you mentioned binaural beats, and also there I thought that might be good to define what that is and maybe to explain a bit how can like putting on some headphones and listening to music change the state you're in.
So binaural beats was discovered in the 1800s, and what it is it's the use of pure tones in the ear, and with headphones, you place a pure tone at a specific frequency in one ear, and then another pure tone in the other channel at a slightly different frequency. And then the brain creates this differential called the frequency following response and creates this beat that the brain begins to follow. Our systems naturally search for patterns, look for patterns, operate on patterns. And when the brain experiences that, it begins to follow that pattern and adapts brain waves to that specific frequency. And these different frequencies align with different experiences, like deep meditation or deep relaxation, or even mystical states when you reach higher frequency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the way I understand it is that it's bringing the brain into certain frequencies and like I guess a lot of people have heard about like alpha frequencies or beta or delta or different frequencies in the brain.
Yes.
And that they are connected with states that are more externally focused or more internally focused, or even like going into states that are more connected with the subconscious, almost with a dreamlike state.
Correct. Like, so for example, even daydreaming is a slight phase or shift into a different brain state and state of awareness, because maybe you're in a classroom and it's not your favorite class, and so you begin to daydream. You're shifting your attention. This is what you're doing. You're shifting your attention to something different. And we can naturally shift that. And with practice, we can do that even without the use of music or audio entrainment, but simply knowing how to phase to those different points of attention. So one thing that may be misunderstood sometimes is that you're moving to an alpha state only, where our brain has all of these frequencies occurring at the same time. But what we're doing is that we're amplifying a particular frequency, which phases us into that state of awareness. So they're always
we're focusing on one of them, and so to speak, right?
Once again?
We're focusing on one of the frequencies and through that amplify that, while the others are still there, but more in the background.
That's correct. And so that aligning with a particular state of awareness, that becomes your point of attention. And you mentioned the music part of it. So you can have binaural beats in and of themselves and listen to that. It's not necessarily the most pleasant thing to listen to, which is where the use of music or soundscapes, nature sounds, really makes a difference, because those are things that are pleasant to listen to or that keep our attention enough for the brain to perceive those beats and to create that differential and that beat that helps us phase and supports the movement to those states. And so the music now becomes a carrier. And if we can provide music that is pleasing to the ear, that people enjoy, they're more likely to be attentive to it, which then allows the perception of the entrainment to work in a more efficient way. And so this is one of the things that I endeavor to do at the Institute, is to broaden the range or diversify the types of sounds or music that we use to help deliver the audio tech to support consciousness exploration.
Yeah, I love that explanation, Ignacio, and I feel what you shared with that, basically layering the frequencies into music or underneath music, and music that's like, yeah, joyful to listen to is really important, because at least in my experience with all practices around altered state of consciousness, doing it once, for example, on a retreat, or let's say over a few days on a retreat, and then doing it as a practice in your all-day life, that's very different. And it helps if it's like a pleasant experience, and if it's something that, has also maybe an entertaining factor to it, so to speak, right? And then it's like just easier to bring it into the all-day life.
Right. And this is something that, Bob would say too, in terms of exploration, is have fun. Go into this and have fun. We can look at this inner work, consciousness exploration, from a couple of perspectives. Meditation and consciousness exploration, by its very nature, leads you to know yourself better. And you have the opportunity to confront different facets of yourself, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, even physically. You may become aware of things physically where you may have tension in your body, or an injury that's a subtle injury that we somehow get accustomed to, and it becomes normal. But then all of a sudden, when you move to these practices or exercises, and you're practicing you're practicing the relaxation of the physical body, you begin to become aware of built up tension in parts of the body.
Yeah.
And so you have to work to release it. Those become a distraction as well. But the use of sound, say, for example, a beautiful river, a flowing river, or the sound of ocean waves, which we use a lot in our exercises, has a relaxing effect. It already has the propensity to support movement to a state of deep relaxation. But a fire alarm is jolting. That's not relaxing. So this is a very, very simple way of illustrating the impact of sound. And so if we can use a sound that's joyful, that already begins to help move us to that state, that makes our intention in the meditation even more supported, because the emotion or frequency in the music already is beginning to cultivate this sort of foundation of being joyful, of being peaceful, of sleep, of conscious connection. And so it does become a practice. It's not just entertainment, but it becomes an intentional action or activity. I'm listening with a particular objective in mind. And so going to these states can be sometimes challenging, because we confront things that we wouldn't normally confront because of the noise. And this is something that's very important in this as well. Exploration, the music itself does not make us have experiences. The audio tech doesn't make us have experiences. The music doesn't do that. But what those things do, it helps support the quieting or the movement of attention away from noise, chatter in the brain to allow what already exists there to be observed.
Mm.
And this is for
Totally,
everyone.
yeah. Yeah. What that reminds me of is like the saying that psychedelic medicines are amplifiers, and they amplify the things that are already present in us, but they don't give us a certain experience. They open up the experience that's already stored in
Mhm.
us and make it bigger, so we can actually really notice
Mhm.
it, really experience
Mhm.
it.
And an interesting note on that is that I've um, talked with people that have had um, experiences with plant medicine or have been in ceremonies or rituals, guided journeys. And once they've had that experience and maybe do consciousness exploration, they realize I'm experiencing similar things. It I can bring to a meditation the intent of wanting to explore certain aspects of self, and it leads you to that experience. Or some people will say, I've had this experience, I know what's present inside of me, and then I know what to search for or to explore in a meditative experience. And so it can become um, an almost a comparable or even its own kind of guide to know the potential of what you can experience just yourself without the plant medicine. Um, but it really comes down to discovering who and what you are.
Yeah, that's so beautifully put. I really love that. And yeah, we already use this word practice, and I would love to hear a bit like about how practice looks for you nowadays, and maybe also how it's different from practices in your past.
So I would practice regular meditation. Uh, I learned to do TM, transcendental meditation, and I
Mm-hmm.
would do um, the recommended 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening. Um, but even my own personal practice in music and um, the need to be focused all the time during practice really created a foundation for me to be able to focus on things um, well. This is, at the exclusion of all else, it was playing Beethoven or Mozart or Bach. And that by itself, I'm in frequency, in music and sound, experiencing the composer's intent, the stories they were telling. So it wasn't too difficult to be focused. And so when I would do meditation, and when I finally learned let's call it a real system of meditation, uh, I was able to go deep pretty quickly. And I found that the 20 minutes was not enough. And so I would extend those periods, to an hour, hour and a half. And ultimately, I was doing a couple of hours, two, sometimes three times a day. Um, I didn't have uh, a family or children. I had my own practice and my own teaching, and I had, I owned my own time, so I was able to do that. Would also find time very early in the morning, which is a practice that I do now. I tend to do meditation between 3 o'clock in the morning and 6 a.m. every day. And then sometimes during the day, I'll take a little break and I'll do a short exercise. Um, and sometimes we're creating new exercises at the institute, and so I'll try those and test those. And so it's a nice little a little the benefit of working at the
And an
institute.
exercise would be something like a guided
Correct,
meditation.
correct.
Yeah.
This is an unusual um, detail. Is Bob never really referred to these as meditations. These were exercises. You know, you're going to strengthen a skill. And one of his big objectives was to provide everyone with practical tools that they could use every day in the exploration of who and what they are, of consciousness. And so these exercises, and to your question about practice, I've taken the stance that it's a practice. It's something that I don't know that I'll ever perfect, and that's not my goal. Each day I come to an exercise or to a meditation session, it's new. It's brand new. Even if I listen to the same meditative exercise every day, it's new because our very nature is dynamic. We're different moment to moment because we see something new, we hear something new, a new bit of information, we have some sort of light bulb of a thought that we somehow aligned with and perceived. And so when we come to the meditation, we come to it with a new set of data, of information that we now have through experience. And so each meditation is new. I can't perfect that experience because that was the last experience. I'm to the next one, I'm to the new one. And so it is a practice. It's, to me, it's not a goal to reach a certain point that I can do this a certain way, but it's using the tools, it's becoming adept with the tools and using those tools effectively to expand awareness or to download new creative data or new understandings or to reset my nervous system or to heal something in my body or in my emotions or mentally, or to send that to somebody that has asked for that.
Wow. And I love how you mentioned that it's also, you said something like accessing new creative ideas or downloading creative ideas, right? And I remember a few years ago, I got a book about Quincy. It was about Quincy Jones and his way of producing. And they interviewed a lot of different people he worked with, artists and engineers. And a lot of them shared that he would, for example, lie on the floor or like rest his head in his hand on the mixing desk. And some people would think he's just maybe a bit old now and has to sleep. But what he actually did was that he got quiet and went into like an altered state of consciousness, like a short moment of dream, you could say. And then when he would come back, he would say, okay, that's exactly that. This is let's do this, or let's add this, or let's like change this. And he would have a new inspiration basically, and could then immediately test that and and take it from there. And I really loved that as a metaphor for that. Creativity is like a pool that we can access, like something we can let flow through us, and quietening the mind is really helpful to receive a new thought or receive a new part of information.
And that's really that's my perspective too, to be able to access this sort of, let's call it a database of thought potential. And if we have a creative block, let's say, I don't like to talk about that too much, but let's just call it a creative block. And
it's like language that's usually used.
And Quincy Jones would sit and go to this altered state. He was accessing a different data set in his own awareness. And accessing thought potential bringing it back, and then allowing it to blossom in the waking state. That's that daydreaming experience that I mentioned earlier. He just went into it very easily with no headphones, but he's probably done this through practice. I know if I quiet this, align with that thought potential will come. Right now, I'm having this block. I need to move away from this and begin perceiving things in a different way. There's a different mode of perception that's at play. And so all of the master composers, Beethoven was well known for getting furious, scribbling on his manuscript, throwing it, creating a tantrum, and then he would go for a walk. He was accessing a different mode of perception, and then would come back and write the Fifth Symphony or the Seventh Symphony or a beautiful piano sonata or a string quartet. And a lot of those are often, they refer to nature. The Sixth Symphony, for example. And so there's a lot to be said. There's a lot of history, I think, that's maybe undefined as consciousness exploration, but it is accessing these different thought potentials.
Totally. And while you shared that, I thought, well, I reflected also on the last month, and then I felt, actually sometimes when I used to do exactly that, to like go into meditative state and see what's coming up through that sometimes instead of that, I would, ask an AI like Claude. And I was like, I'm wondering if that's really that helpful. You know what I mean? Like the temptation to, instead of like exploring something that's a bit deeper, to just use more logic, so to speak, and put a logical question into AI, how to solve that, or like for an idea is just quite tempting, but actually way less original than accessing something deeper in yourself.
Certainly, and especially if you're already used to accessing that inspiration, let's call it, and even that, think about this, the word inspiration, the root of that is breath.
Yes.
And so you take a breath, you are able to begin to quiet yourself, or actually maybe not even quiet yourself, but you're able to move your awareness to one thing, that rhythm of breathing.
Yes.
Your awareness begins to track that. So it doesn't necessarily quiet things. We have the illusion of things getting quieter, but what happens is that we begin to be in a place where we have the ability to be more selective about what we observe. We begin to choose the thought potential and observe that. If that doesn't suit us, we move on to the next one. We move on to the next one. It surprises me so often everyone says, I'm trying to quiet my mind when I meditate. And then in the next breath they say, but I never experience anything. I never perceive anything. And I tell them, it's because you're moving, you're trying to stifle it. Instead, focus on your awareness and what your awareness is focused on, and then perceive that, right? So let's just say you decide to use the logical part of you and use AI. That to me begs the question, once you have that information from AI, what do you do with that? You actually take it into the non-logical part and begin to explore the information. And then you, in your awareness, determine if it's useful or not.
Sure.
So it can be a great tool, but if you simply take what AI gives you and utilize that, then maybe there's some substance missing. The human touch, the touch of George's mind or Ignacio's mind or thought potentials. And I think that's where the real substance happens is in the evaluation and discernment of the information that you may, produce using AI, or even when you talk to other people and they give you their ideas, you still automatically take it in and explore it. You probe it. You see.
Sure,
So this is
it brings me back to this role of an art director, right? And I've observed some people in their creative work who I would say were very much art directors, because they maybe were not the most skilled producers or musicians, but they knew exactly what they want. They knew when it feels right, when it sounds right, and they were really good in orchestrating a lot of people to together to come to this vision where they feel like, okay, that's exactly it. And this, I found that a very inspiring path of collaboration.
It's an interesting thing to me, because in that role, let's just say a conductor, a musical conductor, or a producer, director, and this I think is applicable in any field or any business or a school. As a teacher, that person who's directing that particular experience, look at their perspective. Their perspective is observer. They're observing, and they have this perspective where they're zoomed out and they see a bigger picture. And from that, they can see, oh, if we continue moving in this direction, this is where we're headed. But the person sitting in the middle of the cello section or in the middle of the first violin section, they only see the couple of people around them, and they're going to follow them and be in line with them. Well, if they're playing out of tune and they tune themselves to those few people, that's
then that whole compartment, right, so to speak, is out of tune. Yeah.
But the perspective, the composer or the conductor begins to hear the first violin's out of tune, and then he just does this for them to listen, and then they realize, oh, we're not in tune with the orchestra, and they adapt. So it's that observer. And this is, as a trainer, we do not impart knowledge about experiences. We help guide participants through their experiences. And for me, as a trainer, the way to be able to do that is to know how to go in, do my own inner work inside, and guide myself as an observer through that, and observe what happens during those experiences, and then move in this direction or that direction.
It makes so much sense to me, and for me, also like you sharing about the orchestra, that's also a metaphor for consciousness. It could be like the conductor being the self, and then the different players being the different parts of a human being that are always also in a conversation with each other. And sometimes that conversation is harmonious, and sometimes there's a lot of conflict between those parts.
True.
Or disharmony.
Disharmony.
And I remember in one of our prior conversations, you shared quite a bit how you brought this kind of work to your I'm not sure if it was child or children. You have me.
Yeah, I have three. And yes, three children. Okay. My youngest daughter was really the one who was very receptive to this. Certainly, she was born into this. I was doing this work, and was always around it. And so, even from infancy, I was already doing meditative practices. She would be in the room with me. I would hold her sometimes during meditation. So she was certainly in the atmosphere and in the energy of transcending and going into these deep states. So
That's so beautiful. And yeah, I would love you to speak a bit into how that informed your parenting experience, and also what kind of practices you did actively with her. Because I know the last time you shared a bit about that, and I found that really inspiring.
Yeah, of course. So I guess I'll speak to the how it impacted me as a person and ultimately as a parent. I can relate this a little bit to, one of the most important things that I think that Bob Monroe says and wanted or endeavored to communicate to people who would come to the Institute, come to the research center, is that you're more than your physical body. And knowing that who I was as a person, a father, could react a certain way, would feel a certain way, I'd have certain emotions. If I was tired, I'm living this earth life experience that's filled with challenges, obstacles, um, heartaches, triumphs, all of it. And that can really impact us. And if we're not careful, we begin to operate from that, and you become reactive and not creative. And there were days where my daughter was frustrated or tired or hungry or sick and crying, and of course it pains us when our children are that way. But it's a natural part of life. But how we respond, being aware that I was operating this vehicle, this human part of me, I realized I need to operate from a place of the driver of this vehicle. And knowing full well that that also exists in the child. Their body is uncomfortable. They may have lots to say, but they can't say it yet. They can't communicate,
Yeah.
I'm really hungry, or I'm
Mm-hmm.
just so exhausted, I can't relax. They can't say that. They're saying it the way their body is allowing them to say it.
Yeah, certainly as an infant or as a baby, right? Like,
Yeah. And so to be able to approach a child with that understanding that I'm their guide and their steward. I don't own this child. This child does not belong to me. I have this privilege of being able to be a guide for that child, for that being, and that they deserve that guidance and flexibility and understanding, compassion and empathy, so that they can do the work that they're here to do too. They're here on this journey of self-discovery and expansion too. And to be able to be challenged to be humble enough to say, I understand what you're going through, and what you're feeling is very important and valued and valid. And so that helped me react far less than I think I would have if I was simply operating from the human. Well, you're misbehaving, you're grounded, go to your room. Versus, I want to know what's happening and what I can do to make this easier for you to work with. Not take it away from you. How can we make this easier for you to work with? Some of the practices, I would create little games. When my daughter could finally walk and play outside, one little game that I created, I put two baskets about, 25 or 30 feet apart. And I put little bean bags that were different colors in those baskets. And I would have her pick up one of the bean bags. And as she would, the object was just to take that bean bag and put it in the other bean bag basket and then get another bean bag. So she was walking back and forth. But what I would ask her to say as she's walking is to say an affirmation. My body is strong and healthy. My body is strong and healthy. And she would say that as she's walking. And then we'd grab a new one. And then we'd talk about, what do we want to say now? I feel joyful today. Perfect. And I feel joyful. And we would walk and we would just put these bean bags in for 5 or 10 minutes. So it was a little movement. It was a little bit of fresh air. And it was affirmation in a very rhythmic way. Again, there's that rhythm, the walking, the breathing, the saying of the words. We would do things like that. As she got a little older and she could sit, we would do candle focus together. We would light a candle, set it on a little table, and we would sit on the floor and we would look at the candle, and I'd look across at her. And when she would look at me, I would say, okay, now we're going to look again. We're going to count to 20, but don't move your eyes. We would count to 20. And then over time, we would extend that to where it was 5 minutes at a time. And this was just, it wasn't about being fixed on it. It was about saying, okay, you looked away. We just need to look back. So after 20 seconds and she looks away, I said, great, now look back. And it's just coming back to center. Coming back to center. It's the practice. It's a simple thing. It's not wrong that you become distracted. This is the nature of our awareness. We're curious. We're looking for things. Just bring it back. And there started the practice of meditation without even realizing you're going to meditate. And then every night, when I would, get ready to put her to bed for sleep, she would get ready, brush her teeth, all set. I'd go and sit with her, and she would say her nighttime affirmations. She would have a series of affirmations and would say those every night and then go to sleep. I would encourage her in the morning, if she remembered, to say them as she woke up. She might have done that, I don't know, because mornings, it's time to get ready, let's go. And then around I don't know, early teen years, she said, well, Dad, I think I'm okay now. You don't have to tuck me in anymore. And I said, and don't forget. And she said, I know. I'll do my list. I'll do my affirmations. I said, okay, good. And then several years later, she came to me and she said, Dad, do you know what the law of affirmation is? The law of attraction is? And I said, well, I think I've heard of that before. I said, what is it? Tell me about it. And she said, well, it's what you think happens. And I said, okay. And she said, and everything I think happens. And I'll show you. And she opened her closet and she had a stack of journals. Apparently she journaled every day. And she says, everything I write down happens. And so she does and understands that thought creates our experiences. It creates our perception of reality. And she's done this practice. We create vision boards at the beginning of every year as a family. We all create our own vision boards. And it's really quite stunning how effective her practice of that has become. She's very, very plugged into with that understanding. So
that's really beautiful. Yeah, I think it's something really special to bring children up with a lot of those practices and ideas, and not of course not in a dogmatic way, but in a way of like playing and seeing like what does the child naturally then feel drawn to, or what is something that a child enjoys, and then do more of that.
And that's it. And it's really, I think, important not just as a child, but even us in our own exploration, that we learn and begin to understand these things through direct experience. You know,
Yeah.
I could tell you all that this is and this experience as a parent, and it does this. And you might say, that's really great and it's beautiful, but it's really just philosophical. It's just conjecture. You can believe me, but when you experience it yourself is when it really gathers meaning or impact or substance, because it becomes a direct experience. It becomes a wisdom through personal truth. And then we can begin to live that. And when we live that, it's observed by those around us. And that's, I think, our best way of sharing that, is when we can fully embody that and become that. It's apparent to those around us, there's something happening here. What is it? And then they begin to question and explore, what is it about this person that makes me feel this way or makes me think this way? Or how how is it that their children are this way? Or how is it that their life is this way? And they, through their own direct experience of you, now have a catalyst for their own contemplation or exploration, and say, I want to experience that. And then when they do, there's no need to prove. There's no need to brag, because that's just part of you now. And then that becomes the experience for people around them. And so it's not to impart wisdom or fill people with information and say, this is the answer, versus here are some tools for you to use to find the answers for yourself through your own experience. And then to choose whether or not that's an experience that you want to make a fixture or permanent in your way of being. Because we have choices.
Mm. Yeah, that also reminds me on you briefly shared about this practice of doing a vision board, and which I would say is basically a practice to connect with your desires. Would you agree with that?
I would. And
Yeah.
the idea of vision boards and finding pictures or words that represent things you'd like to experience, you'd like to have or own, heal, whatever those things are, those pictures, or better yet, you draw them yourself, because then they contain your energetic imprint.
Mm-hmm.
Your own words, your own music has your energetic imprint. When you choose those things, those pictures, those sounds, those words have a frequency in and of themselves. The objective is to align with that thought potential, that experience in that database of information, is to align with that, and to make that a built-in thought or idea, so that you begin to be open to the experience in your waking state. When you're walking around, you may not realize it, but as you go through your day, the thing you're looking for are the very things that you want to experience and desire. Those programs that you've placed in there, those pictures, the thoughts, those thought potentials. I want to experience perfect health. And then for some reason you find yourself exercising more without trying. Or you find yourself saying, you know what, I'm not really, that piece of chocolate cake normally would have been great. I'll have two, but I'm good. I don't even have an appetite for that. You have now shifted the experience to living in a way that supports the idea of being perfectly healthy.
Mm. Yeah, the idea of that if you are interested in if you start to develop an interest in buying a red car, you see them everywhere, like the selective
That's
attention.
correct.
I always found it very fascinating. And something I'm very curious about, about and how you see that. So it's like you said, like mm, how should I phrase that? Mm, when it comes about this term desire, I find it an interesting question to find out which of the desires that I have are really the desires of my, let's say, higher self, or of like myself, and which are desires that I took up from society or from other people, where they're maybe more ego driven or more about like keeping up or like validation, or like things that are actually not really aligned with me, but that I've start to believe are really important. And does that distinction make sense for you? And if yes, how are you going about to discern which is which? Because I feel if you accept that this distinction exists, then it can be quite a hard experience to follow the wrong desire, so to speak.
So the first thing, assuming that we're different from our higher self, that would be the first point.
Yeah.
It's self. Higher indicates better or bigger, but you're pure self. So let's just start from that place, yourself. And you have this desire. The desire, to me, is the passion for something. There may be an object of that desire. Like, I want this so, so much. To me, that's an impassioned desire.
Yeah.
Do you have passion for that desire? I think this is a great question, because what it does for me is it forces me to look at myself honestly and say, do I really, really want this? It's very, very simple, but I think difficult to do. Do I want this? And I think if you just look at the thing and you just say, I just need to know if I really want this, the answer is there. You'll know, yeah, this aligns with ego. I'm trying to impress the neighbors. I really don't want this.
Yeah. An interesting question that I recently read in a book called The 5 Types of Wealth is, would I still want that if I can't show it to anyone or can't talk to anyone about it? I found that's a really good question.
Very good. Ask. It's very good. And I've used this example. People say, well, I want to have $1 million. I want $10 million. Well, why do you want $10 million? Well, so I can buy a big house with 10 bedrooms and 5 garages and cars to fill it, and a swimming pool and an acreage and maybe a 9-hole golf course and, a boat and all of this. Well, why do you want such a big house? Well, so I can have my family and friends over. They can stay over. We can enjoy the pool. We can go golfing. We can cook beautiful meals, have good food. I'm like, well, why do you want that? Well, because I enjoy their company. Well, why do you enjoy their company? Well, because it feels nice. It feels good. I feel happy. So we've gone from $10 million to I just want to feel happy. And so then I say, okay, let's just say that you have $10 million. Now you're going to worry about when you're going to run out. But let's say maybe you don't worry about running out. Now you have this big house. Do you really want to pay the property taxes on such an expensive big house? Well, no. Okay. Do you want to furnish every room? No. Do you want to clean every room? Well, no, not really. Do you want to take care of the pool chemicals? No. Do you want to mow the lawn on the golf course? No. Do you want to have to clean the boat, take it to the river or to the ocean? You have all of this that goes along with it. And then they wonder why they can't manifest the money to buy all that stuff. Because deep down, they know they don't want it. There's too many things in the way of them wanting that. When
or they actually want something totally
completely
different.
And all they want is to be happy. Do you want all your family and friends over? Because now you have to cook for all those people, and then never mind the dishes that go along with that. And really all you wanted to do is maybe have a friend over for coffee or tea and have a good conversation, and you feel happy. So why not?
Or feel connected.
There you go. I want to connect. Let's come over and have a cup of tea and let's connect. And that's really what you want. You want substance. You want authenticity. You want meaning. $10 million to that, to a simple conversation over tea. That's priceless. And so that's where it's important to be honest. Is this the thing that I really, really want? What's the core? What's the end result if I have that? Do I want the end result of what I think I want?
Yeah. Or what I also hear in that is that an end or a means to an end. And if it's a means to an end, then why not go with the means? Because that's apparently why not go with the end? Because, as you said, I don't want, in that story, that person doesn't really want to have the house. He wants to feel connected and happy. And thinks the house will deliver that.
Yeah. And we cut away so much anguish and frustration. Why can't I manifest $10 million? Why can't I? Why can't I? Because really at your core, that is not a passionate desire. I don't really want that. What I really want is just to connect with my friend, with my loved one, with someone who understands the things I want to talk about. Or I just simply feel good around this person, that even sitting in quiet over a cup of coffee. What a beautiful thing.
So true, yeah. And yeah, in my experience, I do think connecting with desire is very powerful and a great starting point. And life will show us if those desires are really the things that we want, or if it's actually about something different. Or life will also show us. Well, you used the example of money. Like I often reflected on when I had moments where I felt money is a bit difficult right now, or business is a bit difficult right now. I really like this idea that we live in a mirror world, and that the outside world is a mirror of what's going inside. And if we want to make the reflection in the mirror smile, the only way is that we smile, right? And this idea of, okay, if that topic seems to be difficult for me right now, like what is my part in that? And that has been really powerful for me. And for example, exactly through that setup, I became aware of some past trauma that I had completely blocked out until this point. And it has been a really great entryway to use in this way, like the topic of money and finances, to actually learn something way more important about myself.
You say this, we may introduce the idea. We may begin to put something on our vision board that's $10 million. And maybe you get it. And through that, much to what you said, you're going to learn I have this, but I feel empty because it didn't
That could happen too,
give
yeah.
me what I was really looking for. So then we become disappointed and maybe frustrated that, well, now I don't know what I really want, things like that. But one thing that I share sometimes is, what if I put the wrong thing on my vision board? What if I create the wrong circumstance? Well, assuming that there's right and wrong, but let's just say it really wasn't it. You are going to learn something. You're going to learn that that's not really what you wanted. So to me,
which is a very, very valuable lesson
very,
as well.
very, might even be more valuable than
receiving it.
So what if I make the wrong decision? I like to replace the words what if with even if. I'll be okay. I'll be okay. It's learning. That's part of your wealth. You talked about different types of wealth. Knowledge is wealth. Experience is wealth.
Self-knowledge. That's so true. So true. And something I would like to circle back to is music. And where we already explored a bit how music can facilitate self-knowledge or self-experience. For example, in the use of techniques like binaural beats or different techniques that the Monroe Institute utilizes to create those exercises, right, with music. And I'm curious, do you have an opinion on what makes music that is maybe more entertainment different from music that facilitates some deeper experiences?
I think it's really subjective because I know in certain instances, people will put on music in the background and they might put on meditation music, but they're not meditating, but they think they're meditating. To me, they're entertaining the idea. They're entertaining themselves that maybe that's happening. Now, maybe there are certain, music tracks that have the intention of meditation. Maybe, for example, I love cooking. You might turn on some music from Italy when you're preparing a nice Italian meal. But what does that do? Well, it entertains you because, you're having dinner guests and all that. But really what it's doing is it's putting you in a specific frame of mind.
True. Yeah.
So is it entertainment? You might listen to a song and say, hey, to your friend, listen to this song. These words, they're really funny. And listen to the instruments. They sound funny. And you laugh. That's entertaining. But what it's doing is it's putting you in a certain frame of mind of laughter and joy. Joke-like. So to me, you could listen to meditative music and it can entertain you. But if you go to that music, that same music with the intent of deeper exploration, it's moving you to a different frame of mind. So it becomes this bridge to a different state of awareness. And so maybe it's how we define entertainment. I think sometimes people turn music on in the background. I think you've used the word, it's like wallpaper. They turn it on the background because it allows them to have a different point of focus so that they feel like they're quieting the noise. The noise is still there. It's just that their attention is on the music now. So it's more a distraction versus an entertainment. So I mentioned cooking. I love to cook. I love music. One time I had a student's parent ask me a question. Well, when you drive home, I used to have an hour commute one way to get home from teaching. This student's parent said, "What kind of music do you listen to when you go home?" And I kind of laughed and I said, "I don't listen to any music." "Why not? You love music." "Well, I've been listening to music all day. I just want quiet. I want to hear the birds. I want to hear the hum of the tires on the road, the dull roar of the engine that's soothing, because I've been listening to the song Puppy Pranks all day long, or a loud, last movement of the Beethoven Moonlight Sonata, loud and fast. I just need a break. Too many notes in a Chopin etude. I'm done for the day." Well, that's funny. When I cook, I much prefer to cook with no sound and just observe the sounds that I make while I'm cooking. The slicing of carrots, the chopping of onions, the sizzle of garlic in a beautiful olive oil, the clanging of pots and pans, and the almost random nature of sound. That takes me to a specific frame of mind of being totally present in what I'm doing and putting beautiful energy into the food I'm making. Presence.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing very much when you describe that.
And really isn't entertainment. I think really every form of entertainment, it can be visual media, it can be going to going on a hike. It entertains us, it keeps us occupied, it gives us exercise or whatever it does. But what it does is that it shifts us to a different frame of mind. It moves our
That's so true,
awareness
yeah.
away from the ordinary to extraordinary modes of perception, of things that are
Yeah,
outside the norm of what we do day in and day out.
totally.
I think we
Yeah,
become bored with that, and we seek to experience things. Our nature is to expand. All of nature expands. Always. Even through destruction, nature expands. And so when we become complacent or still or bored, understanding the real meaning of boredom, we become bored. We look for something more. This is our nature. What's next? What else can I learn? What else can I do? I'm tired of just doing the same thing all the time.
yeah, I love how you put that, and I feel that there's when it comes to music and listening to music, there are just different ways of doing that. And I feel also background music is important because music can totally change the vibe in a room, for example. And if you come to for example, a place where people meet, be it a bar or like a yoga studio or like a room for a workshop, just having music on in the background is setting a frame already, and can very much change the experience that people have together in a
Yes.
room. So I feel also background music is really important. And then, of course, like for me, listening to music while lying down on the couch or on my bed and with headphones or really good speakers, that for me, that's one of my favorite ways of listening. Some people would call it deep listening, especially with really good headphones where you can hear like all the details in the music, like the way a string is plucked, so the attack of the sound, or like how the reverb sounds, or panning, and all like the technical things, so to speak, as well. It's a very different experience, and I think that's really important. And I remember talking about this with a friend who's also really into music, and also said, yeah, for him it's also really important, for example, to take the time and to listen to a whole album at once without doing anything else. And I feel that's a very that's something that stuck with me, and that I realized, that's something I haven't done for a while. And I started doing that, and it has been a really amazing experience.
See, and this is even with your work.
Really take the space for music like that.
Exactly. It's like with your work, and when I audition or listen to music from potential collaborators at the Institute, I listen to their music. I always try to take time. I don't just listen to it and go, well, this is okay, this will be close. I like to give it, first of all, the attention it deserves. This is someone's work. This is an extension of who they are. It's not just something they do. Ideally, it's an extension of who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll take time, and I will, get comfortable, put on headphones, and really see what is the experience with the music itself. Does it have this potential of carrying me to this place? Because then when we add the entrainment, this becomes the perfect storm. You have this trajectory, the story, the landscape, the timeline of the music, coupled with the support to go to these expanded states. I want to experience the music, be present with it, start to finish, and see what does it have to say? How does it make me feel? And then I'll look at it a little more technically and, systematically. But first and foremost, this is an expression. It's a creative expression of another being, another person. First and foremost, which is one of the reasons that we don't work or create exercises or music that we offer with the use of AI production. This is all produced with real artists, real people. That you and I, we've had really so many conversations, fabulous conversations. I know George, and I know your heart, and I know your creative potential and the beauty in your sounds. And this is what I want to be able to share with our audience and ultimately with the world. And the music, when you play music at a workshop, as people are arriving and you're welcoming them into this sacred space, when you're having a dinner party and you have music on, maybe you're in a sacred ceremony and you have music playing, or you play it during the music, or play the music during the ceremony. It does change the whole experience. But the thing that's very important in what you said is that it's intentional. You're setting the tone. What I'd like to do is to make this experience XYZ experience. This music is conducive to that. Because certainly you wouldn't play music that you would hear in a nightclub or a bar or a lounge at kirtan or at a plant medicine ceremony. You wouldn't play that at a drum circle around a fire.
Not a lot of it. I think there are exceptions of like pop music that I feel okay. The lyrics and everything are perfect for ceremonies.
Okay.
But it's rare. It's not a lot, but it does exist, and I find it actually quite interesting. As an example, how the same piece of music can work in very different surroundings, or just speak to people on different levels, where the lyrics are like very maybe, yeah, very easy to access, but at the same time, I feel there's a deeper meaning in it, or it's more than it maybe says at the first sight, so to speak, or the first
It's an
listen.
excellent point. And in that, there is discernment in choosing which pop music, and it's still at its root very intentional.
Yeah, totally. I mean, an example of my singing teacher is often Leonard Cohen, which was like super intentional with every word, and like a master in like singing every word with the feeling of that word or of that phrase. And still, it's very accessible music.
Yeah, you're transmitting even there in the way you say a word, the way you express, you're placing on it the frequency of that word, and that becomes a transmission. And this is the beautiful part about music to me, is music, they say, is universal, and there's different styles, but you can play music for someone and they'll perceive it, and they'll have an experience listening to a music that may or may not be similar to yours, but there's no vocabulary barrier. There's no need to explain the word. There's no need to explain sentence structure or syntax. It's their sounds that we perceive or we transmit. It's the most direct of the arts. It goes from mind to mind, heart to heart, soul to soul. You don't need paper, film. You can sing something and it goes directly from you directly into another person.
Totally.
And so,
and it's also like doesn't leave. Of course, you can record it with like modern technology, but you also can play a piece of music, and it's just, it doesn't have any physical form anymore after it has been played, which is of course different from visual art, for example.
And so you do maybe record it, but ultimately the recording is decoded, transmitted outside of space and time, so to speak, and reaches the audience with, it doesn't take tangible form. So it's very direct. Very direct.
It's very direct. That's so true. Yeah. And coming slowly to an end of this episode today, I'm wondering if someone would like to experience the kind of music that we have talked about, like some of the exercises of the Monroe Institute. What would you tell this person? What's a good way into that?
Excellent. So you can experience exercises, both excerpts from exercises and full-length exercises on the streaming platforms. So Spotify, Apple Music, all of the streaming services. You just do a search for Monroe Institute, and that'll pull up a sampling of what we offer. You can find tracks for purchase on the Monroe website, which is monroeinstitute.org. You can also visit our YouTube channel, and we have meditations. We do monthly meditations live, and different themes, different topics. We explore different concepts. We have one coming up here soon for the summer solstice. That'll be a live meditation. But every month, they're generally between, I would say, 25 and 35 minutes long. So where you can experience a guided exercise with a little break in between to sort of have a little free flow and just be in that space, and then you're guided back and brought back to waking awareness. So that's another way you can do that. All of those live meditations are archived. They're listed on our YouTube channel, so you can experience their beautiful visuals by our marketing department, if that's helpful to help you focus, or just eyes closed, being able to listen to those exercises. And then, of course, we offer programs for exploration that you can do on campus or at venues around the country, actually around the world, and
Hmm.
also virtually. So if that's something you're interested in, doing deeper explorations, that's available as well.
Amazing. And yeah, I really want to point that out what you mentioned at the end, that you also have a campus, an actual location in the States, right? Like an amazing piece of ground where you run retreats um, and different events,
Correct.
which I think is really special in this time to have a place that's dedicated to this, yeah, kind of work, and also has been around for a long time.
It's a beautiful location in Virginia on the East Coast, and big land, beautiful building. The staff is amazing. Everyone that works on campus really works to create a safe space for visitors, for participants to be able to really retreat from the everyday noise and have the opportunity to have these experiences like Bob said, find out for yourself. Find out for
Yes.
yourself what what what's possible when you perceive in ways that you don't expect and that are extraordinary.
That's so beautiful. And I think that's a great way to close, like find out for yourself. And I will, yeah, certainly add some links to the Monroe Institute, also to the album that we
Please do.
co-created.
And more to come.
Yeah, in the infos about this
Yes.
episode. And yeah, thank you so much, Ignacio, for taking the time today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
And yeah, thank you to all the listeners to also taking your time and attention and awareness to dive deeper into those topics today with us. Thank you so much for being here on Inner Alchemy. If this episode resonated with you, then please share it with someone who might benefit from it. And if you want to go deeper, then you can check out my 10-day course called The Missing Piece that teaches you how the nervous system works and how you can start to regulate your own nervous system. You learn powerful tools how to quieten your mind and your nervous system, how to get in touch with your emotions, and how to feel like who you are is truly enough. And if you would like to work one-on-one with me, you can schedule a free session through my website georgestuby.com. And you can also find me on Instagram as iamgeorgestuby.com. I'm really looking forward to get in touch with you and also to welcome you in one of the next episodes. Stay present, stay embodied, and I'm sending you much love.